Hello everyone, I'm home. Welcome back to my channel. It was a busy weekend. Friday night, I drove out to a little venue that's about 5 miles from our house. I had never been there before. It was a rustic barn with some outside, this gazebo was made like with an old grain bin. They had a few little cabins outside, some donkeys, a place where you could get married. It was just a beautiful little place. And I was there to help my niece and my great niece decorate for my great great niece's graduation from high school. It was the prettiest place. It was very rustic. I thought this was pretty, an old cabinet as you walked in the door, and that's where they had them sign her book. And then this is Madeline. We call her Maddie. You talk about an overachiever. Not only is she beautiful and smart, she's participated in just about everything you can imagine. I lost track of all the things she'd done. We set all of her trophies and awards up, and I think we missed a few. She just had so many. And it was just a real rustic venue. And my niece had told me that they were looking for cupcake stands because they were going to do cupcakes. And I said, now don't forget, I've got all those antique cake stands that you could use, because I hated to see them buy cupcake stands and not be able to use them over and over. Now these were some little rustic wood riser ones that they had, so we put the cupcakes on those. And then we put all of her beautiful cookies that they ordered on my cake stands. These were some of the cookies. They were absolutely beautiful. I didn't have one, but everyone said they tasted really good. So on one of the rustic tables, I took about 5 or 6 cake stands out there, some of my clear ones that are antique, and we just laid those out on the rustic table and put the cookies on them, and it looked really pretty. And people seemed to really enjoy everything. And she had a really good turnout. This was a place where you could get your picture taken with her. And this is her. Now, I said she was my great, great, great niece, and that is true. Madeline is great. We love her a lot. And then on the way home from there, after decorating, I saw this beautiful spaceship-like cloud in the sky, and I just had to take a picture of it for you guys. It was huge. It hung over the whole road. So after we left her party Saturday night, we took off to another town, and we went and did a little bit of thrifting. Now, what I'm showing you here is just your basic stuff you see at the thrift stores, but I got something more interesting coming up later on. But I'm going to show you these things first. This was some restaurant wear that I saw. This was an old piece of restaurant wear. It was in bad shape, so I didn't buy it, but I had never seen a piece like that before. And then I saw this pretty crystal vase. Actually, it could have been cut glass. It was real heavy. Then I saw this little mercury glass votive, and it was very delicate, and I picked it up, and it was just paper thin, and it had a real pretty color inside, but I didn't get it because it was so delicate. I was afraid it would break easily, and I have to have votives that are heavy, especially if I put them outside. Then they had these, I'd call them Majolica-like plates. They were heavily embossed blue and whites, and of course I loved them, but they only had 2, and I didn't really see any purpose for having those. And then they still had the plate that I loved the last time I was there that goes with one of my collections that was on the, they had glued a candlestick to it to make it into a cake stand, and I just think somebody was afraid they'd break that taking it apart. Then I saw a heavy piece of copper, which I always buy, but this one was shaped like a fish, and I just didn't really care for it. But I love to incorporate copper in with my blue and white dishes, and that's what we're going to talk about today, blue and white. The reason we're going to do this is because of something that's coming up later that I got at this thrift store. So when I was young in school, we had a teacher named Mrs. Mocklet, and she was a home ec teacher at one time, but she was also our guidance counselor, and she was the sweetest woman ever. She always told us her name rhymed with chocolate when we were little kids so we could pronounce it. And she was one of my customers in my salon for probably 30 years, and she became a very, very dear friend. And she turned me on to Flo Blue. This was her house. Now, I always thought her house reminded me of like the Baldwin sisters on the Waltons TV show. She had a huge living room with real Victorian furniture, and she had crystal and just antiques and cranberry glass. She also turned me on to cranberry glass. These are pictures someone else took. I wish I had taken more pictures of her home, but I didn't. And several years after she passed, about 5 years ago, her son was living there and it burned down. And I think he had his own style of antiques, and he had gotten rid of a lot of her decorative stuff. So I hope the Flow Blue didn't go in this fire. I don't know, but she lost the house, and it just made me sad. But this was the piece that she gave me when I got married. And it set me on this journey to find Flow Blue until I was in an antique store and I saw how darned expensive it was. So when I started thrifting, that's one of the things I looked for, and I didn't find it very often, but I'd say in the last 10 or 15 years, I finally have accumulated a pretty good set of mismatched pieces, but that doesn't bother me a bit. I love it. I use it. This was a piece I got at a flea market. I don't even think they knew what it was. I picked up plain pieces. Now, in antique stores, they go pretty pricey, especially a picture like this. It would probably be $50 to $75. I think I gave $1 for that one. And this one, I can't remember what I gave. It was not more than a couple dollars. But this is a bowl I also found at a thrift store. I found all but what Mrs. Mocklet gave me from a thrift store. Sometimes I'll use that pitcher and this bowl together and use it like a pitcher and bowl because I kind of have to stack my stuff because I don't have a lot of space to store it. And then this is not Flow Blue. This is just cobalt with gold trim, but it goes really well with Flow Blue. And sometimes I'll just stack plates on top of it, and sometimes I use it. These plates are from the 1800s. They're very old. And I found them, I think I got like 5 of them at a thrift store one day. And this is a piece that I call blurry. It's Flow Blue, but it's so blurry that you can barely see the design or the stamp on the back. And I don't know if that's what they're called. That's just what I call them. But they're very old. And this is a gravy boat that I found one day for 50 cents. And it's probably my most expensive piece because I saw one online and they wanted $429 for it. And then on replacements.com it was expensive. And it's the one that someone had written. There's a little tag on the bottom. It said it's from Aunt Emma when she moved from Colorado in 1900. So you know it's an oldie, and it must be kind of rare because I've never seen it priced less than about $100 or any gravy boats like it. And then, of course, I found a couple of meat platters, which are pretty... This one's not real decorative, but I think the simpler the better. And this one has a stain on it, but these are like 115, 120 years old. And of course, this is my only butter pat that I own. Some people collect just butter pats, and I remember the day I found this one. I was in a Goodwill and I spotted it, and it was only 69 cents. And I had to take a picture of it immediately and put it in my car because I was afraid it would fall down through the cracks of my cart and I would break it. This is a little, I call it a coaster. It's a teacup saucer, and it's just used as a coaster. And then I was with my friend Sherry at the Covered Bridge Festival and found this Flow Blue plate with fruit on it. And you know I love my fruit. And I think food just looks absolutely wonderful on Flow Blue dishes, and we use them. I had made my husband some pancakes, and as you can see, they don't look as pretty on an old Walmart plate. And I can't eat this kind of stuff, so I just did that so you could see it. But I put some pecans and powdered sugar on my husband's pancakes. Now, we don't do this often. Maybe once every 2 or 3 months I'll make pancakes and doll them up. But he loves them. And we use our plates. This is the one Mrs. Mocklet gave me, and I use it quite often. And then I was kind of looking around the house for some more because I kind of tuck them here and there because I love them so much. And I found this one on my stove behind my copper salt and peppers. And here's another blurry piece. I found it recently. It was 50 cents, and I'm sure someone looked at it and thought, who would want that in a thrift store? Because this isn't a blurry picture. This is actually the blurred print on the plate. It's very old, and on the back it's blurred so bad that you can't even tell what company made it or what kind it is. But I loved it. For 50 cents, I'm not going to pass that up. And am I going to go into an antique store and give $40 or $50 for one of these plates or pieces? Most likely not, ever. But look at this. For 50 cents or $1, maybe even $2, I'm not going to leave that behind. All day long, I will purchase these for rummage sale prices. I just can't pass them up. This is a little saucer that I found a long time ago for probably 50 cents. It's Flow Blue around the edge, and it's got beautiful pink roses. Just about a year ago, I found another one, and it's a little bit faded compared to the first one, but they're the same, and I use them for coasters. If we have a piece of cake, I might pull one of those out. And then I met my friend Elaine's one time. She sold antiques at her house, and she had this big tall cabinet. It was like 1.5 feet wide by about 6.5 feet tall, maybe 6 feet tall. And it was black, and it was covered in paint and grease and grime, and it had paint cans all over it. And I said, Elaine, would you sell me that cabinet? And she said, you want that thing? So she hollered at her husband, and he said, well, that's my paint cabinet, but I'll take $20 for it. And it's very crudely made. I mean, it's crude. It's just put together. It's probably very, very old. I painted it kind of a mushroomy green color, and it's been that color ever since. And I was at Hobby Lobby one day, and I found a piece of metal decoration that they had on sale for 50% off. I'm sure I wouldn't have paid any more than that for it. And I just screwed it to the top and painted it too. And like I said, the cabinet's really kind of crude, but it's really pretty. And it holds all my blue and white and some books. And this is a little trinket tray that I found, and it had a monogram on it. And I never really paid any attention to the monogram until one day I really looked at it, and it said JMS. And of course, I'm Marcy Jo Johnson, and my maiden name started with an S. So I say it's my monogram. Then I was looking one day, and I found these 4 little saucers that are missing their cups, and they're probably a TJ Maxx or Home Goods item. They're newer, but they had little chickens or roosters on them, and I bought them, and I use them for coasters. And then, of course, of my big sets, it took a while to accumulate several sets enough to have, the whole enough for dinner. But I've got old British castles, locks of Scotland. I love them. When I see them, I can't pass them up. And this one, Independence Hall, I've got about 5 of these, and I've just found them all at different places. And they're usually around 99 cents to $2. And this was a TJ Maxx or Home Goods one. It's a brand new one. But look at the beautiful designs on them. I only have one of these saucers, but I use it. And then this one's interesting. We live about an hour and 45 minutes from Indianapolis, and this is Monument Circle, which we visited many, many times. And I found it on a plate. So it's blue and white, and of course I had to have it. And then this is the old Capitol in Iowa, it says. And it's the only one I have of this one, but it's just beautiful. And look at that image. It's just, I just love them. So even though I have 3 or 4 sets of kind of the same transferware, and I also have a red set that I'm building on, they look good together. You could set a whole table with a mix match or mismatch of all of them, and it would look fine. I buy little cups that don't have any saucers, or they're just one all by themselves, and I'll put them in my brown sugar. I'll put them in my sugar and my flour. I just can't pass up a pretty little cup that's old and delicate. And then I found these one day. They're called Royal Abbey pattern, and they're very old. I found a stack of 9, and I use these little plates every single day. I'm always grabbing one of those. And then I have a couple of big blue and white spatterware and blue ring crocks on top of my refrigerator. Don't use them often because I've got so many crock bowls. But this crock bowl, I'm glad that I was able to thrift it because I broke it one day. I dropped it and cracked it right down the middle. And it was cobalt blue, and I just loved it. And then I found this. It's a measuring cup. It's a 2-cup measuring cup with a cow on it. I found that at Old Time Pottery. And those are the roses that I dried out of my garden about 5 years ago. And of course, Flow Blue's always beautiful when you are entertaining, serving pie. It's just, a little extra touch that I think people like. Then the same night I was thrifting all this stuff, I found this blue and white crock. I just picked it up. I didn't care if it was new or old. It was blue and white. That's a no-brainer. You just get them. And it ended up being a Robinson's crock from Roseville, Ohio. And I can't tell if it's real old or newer, but it doesn't matter to me. I saw them on the internet all the way up to $65, and I love it. So let's take a little visual break from all the blue and white while I get you prepared for what I found that night when I walked down the dish aisle. I'm just cruising through the store, and when I get to the dish aisle, that's when I get excited because I usually find like one plate that I love. And I turned the corner and I started seeing Currier and Ives dishes in blue and white. And I've never jumped on the Currier and Ives bandwagon. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of girls on YouTube, they collect it and they love it. And they're so excited when they find some. And I see it a lot, 6 or 7 pieces here and there. But this was everywhere. Everywhere I turned. It was in the glass aisle. It was over by the metal. They just had it everywhere. And I was thinking, Marcy, you don't know. You're not doing that. So I went on and I came back a little bit later because I always scanned that aisle a couple times. And I kept seeing unusual pieces that I'd never really seen in that pattern before. And there was so much of it, I knew that this was a full set. Well, they had 6 plates and 6 bowls. So it was a setting for 6 and it was 99 cents a piece. So I started putting it in my cart, and then I'd put it back, and then I'd get it in my cart, and I'd think, you can't do this. Where are you going to put it? And then I was noticing that they had some, this plate here is like, it's probably 12 inches across. It's a great big, serving dish, I guess. It's just a huge plate. And then I saw this, a pie plate in blue Currier and Ives. I didn't even know one existed. And when I saw that pie plate, I thought, okay, I've got to have that. So I got that and I started kind of picking through. There were some that had chips and I went through and picked out all these plates. I got 6 plates, 6 salad plates, 6. Look at this pattern. They were all the old cottages and colonial homes. I got 6 bowls. I got 6, I didn't get cups and saucers because I don't do cups and saucers. I don't need those. And I didn't really see too many. I only saw a couple of those. But I loved all the prints. And look at this little bowl. Oh my gosh. It's got these little kids playing out in front of their little colonial home. And one little girl's just hanging on the fence. Jumped up there with her little dress on while they're pushing the fence open. I mean, you don't see stuff like that on dishes today. And these, I don't know if they're the oldest ones or if they're a reproduction, but I love them nonetheless. They're just gorgeous. And I got 2 serving bowls. And there was one bowl that was, it was a plate. And it said it was called a tabbed plate. And I would say it's probably like their meat platter. I didn't see a meat platter. I'm sure there is one in this pattern. But this one was just a big serving plate with 2 tabs on the side that would make it easy to pick up. And I just went through the stacks. Now this little plate here has the little steamboat, which I've never been real crazy about the steamboat. I want the ones with the old houses and the little kids and the guys doing the thrashing and all that. So those are the ones I picked up. Now here's the tabbed plate. I looked it up online and they call it a tabbed plate. And then that big plate, I'd never seen one of those before. And my beautiful pie plate. So I ended up getting 36 pieces altogether. And when I got home and looked at my receipt, the kid that rang me up shorted it $5, so I got them for $5 less. I called up there and they said, don't worry about it. He got tired of sacking up all my stuff and he's missed a few pieces as he's packing them up. But so I got the whole set for less than that. And I can always sell it if I get tired of it. I mean, it's very sellable, but I like it and I found a place for it. I've got them stacked up on the floor in the corner of my kitchen. I do have a cabinet for them, but I'm going to have to make some space. But guys, they were just awesome. And here they are stacked up on my bed. And I just love these patterns. I just don't know how they ever made them like that on a plate, especially 100 years ago when they used to make them. And I'm so happy with them, I can't see straight. And of course, I have my blue and white towels I put out for summer, and I had sewn little buttons on them and little hoops so that I can hang them up. It makes them easier not to drop. So yeah, that's my story. And I was looking at this stack of plates, and I'm missing those top plates, and then I remembered I gave them to my niece. And I'm like, wow, I gave some plates away. And then it's no wonder it led me to, my love of dishes led me to making miniature plates. I take nail gel that they use in artificial nails, and I'll sculpt a plate out of nail gel, or I will use cardstock and an image that I print off the internet, or sometimes I use cardstock and I paint them and I glaze them, and I make them for my miniatures, my doll houses, my little antique stores. This is one of my little miniature antique stores, a whole cabinet full. I also make other plates, but these are some real porcelain plates that I bought at a dollhouse show. And then this is just my little antique dollhouse. It's not a dollhouse, it's a miniature antique store that I decorate for summer in kind of an Americana theme. There's a little salt glazed crock made by Jane Graber of Nashville, Indiana. She's one of my favorites. I used to buy miniatures of. I made that platter with the fruit. And I love making my little books and my little bowls and decorating my little antique store for the different seasons. That little bunting in the back is actually heavy paper. I just folded it up and made it look wrinkly and stained it a little bit. And when you look inside the windows of the little antique store, it looks like fabric. And the little tin on this little green cabinet says Dan Patch. And we live near Oxford, Indiana, and Dan Patch was a famous horse, and they used to have Dan Patch days. I don't know if they still do that anymore, but I thought that was a cute little piece that I made. And then, like I said, I just decorate it for the different holidays, and it hasn't been changed all year, and it's been sitting down in the basement. I just brought it up the other day, and I made these little crocks with the blue bands on them several years ago. So, speaking of Americana, at the Goodwill that day where I found the Currier and Ives, I found these Avon bottles with white bodies and yellow heads of Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Well, I knew exactly what I was going to do with them when I saw them. They were 99 cents. I smelled the cologne inside, and on the way home, one of them leaked, and my whole vehicle smells horrible. It's called Wild Country. I thought that was funny that they were presidents and the cologne's called Wild Country. But there was also an Abraham or a Benjamin Franklin, Teddy Roosevelt, and there were some others, but I just got the Washington and Lincoln because I knew what I was going to do with them. Now, I got on the internet. They're not valuable as is, but I saw these that were gold, and they were worth a little bit more. But the ones I got, they're 99 cents. They were scratched up. Don't be mad at me, but I knew what I was going to do with them, and I came home and did it. It took like 10 minutes, and voila, I spray painted them black. I love them. I'm going to put them downstairs. I absolutely love the way Lincoln turned out. Their features are just wonderful on these little bottles. And I'm going to put them downstairs with my colonial and primitive antiques, like by some of my crocks and old baskets, and they'll look really nice down there. But it took 5 minutes. They dried. I used a flat paint, but it's almost like a satin. And then I put them next to some books to see what they look like as bookends. And I emptied out that awful cologne, but even though I washed them and everything, you can still smell Wild Country cologne when you walk past them. I love them. Then, of course, I made a pie this week, but we've had a lot of rain and it weeped badly. So let's go out to the garden and look around. I finally painted my little potting table out in the backyard, and I put some pretties on it, and I've just been enjoying it so much. I sit out there in the morning, I sit out there in the evening, and here's a little idea. If you have some old seed packets, you can print off your old seed packets and put the images on just about anything, and then glaze over them with a sealer. These are some little pillow tucks I made a few years ago. I sold a ton of them. I just took a little, maybe 10-inch by 6-inch couple pieces of fabric. I printed out my seed pack and then glued it on there, and then I sewed up the pillow. You don't have to sew it. You can hot glue it if you want and stuff it. Or you can just sew it on the outside. You don't even have to turn it wrong side out. My friend Kim Swaney had made me a pillow tuck with Santa Claus on it, and they're just little and cute, and you can tuck them into any little vignette, and they look really pretty in the summer. I just love mine, and I sold so many of them, I don't think I have any of these now. I'm going to have to look and see if I have any left. And this is my mint that grows wild out in the backyard. And these are some pictures from when Sherry and I used to go set up in the summertime flea markets. We would always have gardening like stuff. And my friend Kim Swaney gave me this cute little pot with a spigot that I love. And yeah, I've been just enjoying my yard and enjoying my porch and trying to keep the bugs at bay. I had told in this video, and I edited it, that I used Pine Sol spray to get rid of the bugs. And you can use Pine Sol, but you have to dilute it a lot and just kind of spray it on the legs of the bottoms of your furniture and kind of around your windowsills and door frames and around the base of your house. And of course, if it rains, you have to redo it, but that little scent of the Pine Sol seems to keep the bugs at bay. And I planted a few geraniums. I've got to pot this one yet, and I've just really been enjoying it. I would appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. I'm working on the Elvis project, and I've got some other things coming up. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time on I'm Home. Go out and find some beauty.